What's going on, YouTube? What's up, Raider Nation? I'm Bubba the Raider, coming at you guys tonight after a long string of creating and deleting videos that you'll never see because of all sorts of technical difficulties. So here's hoping that this one works. I'm going to come at you. It is Monday night. I haven't looked to see Bleacher Report in the last few hours, but I'm going to make my prediction of what our final 53 will look like. Not a ton of surprising cuts, I don't feel like I'm going to make prediction-wise here, but there are some that maybe some people won't agree with. So in terms of quarterbacks, I have us keeping all three. I think that in terms of a third-string quarterback, love him, hate him, whatever, I think that Nathan Peterman's probably about as good as you can get in terms of a third-string quarterback. Mariota didn't play at all this preseason, and Carr's the man moving forward. And so that's my prediction, not a shock. In terms of running back, I have us keeping three. I have us keeping Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, and Trey Regis. I was really interested with BJ Emmons. I thought he had a really awesome preseason. And so I have him as a try to bring him onto the practice squad and hold on to. I have some players on injured reserve as well, and we'll talk about those guys a little bit later on. So I don't think we can cut Jalen Richard right now just because of his injury and the timing. So he'll be on our injured reserve with with the COVID policy now. The NFL has unlimited IR spots. And so I think we're going to be utilizing that for a few players. That's my understanding. So BJ Emmons, hopefully bringing into the practice squad. He looked really good. They both did. Wide receivers, I have us keeping six. This one's kind of tough. I have us keeping Ruggs, Edwards, Renfro, Zay Jones, John Brown. And this last spot, I ended up feeling like we saw a lot from like Dylan Stoner, and even DJ Turner looked all right. And, Keelan Doss is a fan favorite. I think we'll end up keeping Willie Snead. I think his experience is something that when you get down to that depth piece, you want to lean on guys who have experience and who have won. And Willie Snead's been around and he's played with some really good quarterbacks. So I think that ultimately he'll end up getting it. I have us hopefully making DJ Stoner a priority for our practice squad if he clears waivers. Tight ends, I have us keeping three. I have us keeping Waller, Moreau, and it's not necessarily what I think will happen, but what I think should happen. I have us keeping Bushman. I thought he looked pretty good this preseason. I know we've had Derek Carrier for the last few years, and ultimately I do probably think that's the direction we'll go, and I'm okay with that. But I thought Bushman played really well, interestingly enough. And I have us hopefully putting a practice squad priority on Bowers. I thought he also looked pretty interesting as well. So Waller, Moreau, and Bushman is what I'm going to predict. I also wanted to kind of shake up I feel like everyone's going to have us keeping Carrier. I don't know. For our offensive tackles and our offensive line in general, I picked guys who maybe we would have more depth at these pieces, but some of these guys can go both ways. So for tackles, I have us with Colton Miller, Alex Leatherwood, Brandon Parker, and Jared Jones-Smith. I thought he looked pretty abysmal in the preseason, to be honest, especially in that last game, but we need bodies. Maybe we cut him. Maybe we try and find someone else. For guards, I have us keeping Incognito, Simpson, and Good with a practice squad designation. I believe we can for Lester Cotton Jr. Feels a little thin there. My numbers feel a little thin, but I also think that Nick Martin, who I have us keeping, is a guy who can move to guard as well. And for center, I have us having Andre James and Nick Martin with a practice squad designation for Jimmy Morrissey. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jimmy Morrissey make it and Nick Martin get cut, but I'm going to just focus there. I don't know how many guys I marked for practice squad. I don't think that's 10, but who knows. Fullbacks, I was keeping Alec Ingold, but I wouldn't mind spending a practice squad spot on Garrett Groshek. I thought he looked pretty decent this preseason too. I don't think we will, but I think that's interesting. On to the defense. And this is 53 people, minus the practice squad and IR dudes. For defensive ends, I have us keeping 5. Max Crosby, Yannick Ngakoue, Carl Nassib, Cleveland Ferrell, and Malcolm Kuntz. I think that Kuntz is a guy that offers, I know he's playing a lot of linebackers, so he offers that versatility, which is helpful. Same with Ferrell. Obviously, I think we're going to keep him. I love him. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. And he can play inside and outside. D tackles, this is a place where it was really hard to kind of narrow it down. It kind of feels like they're all about the same level of player and a weakness, a true weakness. I have this keeping Jonathan Hankins, Quentin Jefferson, Gerald McCoy, Solomon Thomas, and then I have us keeping Darius Philon and hopefully marking Kendall Vickers for a practice squad designation if he's available for that. For linebackers, I have us keeping 5, but really there's 7 because I'll answer that at the end. We have Corey Littleton, Nick Kwiatkowski, Denzel Perryman, which they haven't made official yet, but I think they will. Tanner Muse, Divine Diablo, and I think we move Javen White and Nicholas Morrow to the injured reserve spot. Depending on the status of their injury, it sounded like Morrow's was pretty severe. White's looked really severe. I haven't heard anything about them, but White's looked really bad. And so for Gruden to say that Morrow will be out longer than White makes it feel like it probably was more severe. And then I wouldn't mind Max Richardson in a practice squad role. He was a guy that played okay. He played all right, and not a bad developmental piece on the practice squad. Safeties, I was keeping Trayvon Merrick, Tyree Gillespie, Jonathan Abram, and Carl Joseph. I wouldn't mind us trying to keep Teamer on the practice squad. I love the way he played, the aggression he played with. He did give up some big plays and was out of position a couple times, but I really liked his fire. Corners, this is another one that was kind of tough. I was keeping 6. I was keeping Trayvon Mullen, Casey Hayward, Nate Hobbs, MVP of the preseason for sure, Damon Arnett, Amik Robertson. I was keeping Lawson. I can't stand Lawson. A lot of people are starting to feel that way too. I think we should cut him. If we were to cut him, I'd want to keep Isaiah Johnson. But I think Isaiah Johnson would be a pretty solid piece for the practice squad as well. And then I have us keeping Carlson, AJ Cole, and Trent Sieg for kicker, punter, and long snapper. I think that this is a pretty interesting, pretty straightforward. I don't think there's any shockers here. For injured reserve, I have us having Jalen Richard, Javen White, Nicholas Morrow, and Darren Lee right now. And then some notable cuts. Keshawn Nixon, who, again, I wouldn't mind him on the practice squad either. I think he's kind of a fan favorite, but I think we've elevated a lot of positions where a lot of fan favorites, like you saw Marcel Aitman go. I think it's time for some of them. And I'm not sure saying that's Keshawn Nixon or not, but I think it could be. Kendall Vickers, again, we talked about that. Patrick Omame, the offensive lineman, played horribly this offseason, as did Jared Jones-Smith, really. I think Jared Jones-Smith showed more promise than Patrick Omame from what I watched. Horrible. Dallin Levitt, it's time. Derek Carrier, I have him cut. Keelan Doss, it's another kind of those things where I feel like we've elevated our wide receiver room enough that he could be in play for that 6th position. I don't know, but I think we have 5 solid guys ahead of him. Derek Carrier and Max Richardson. Those are some key cuts. So let me know what you think. We'll see how close I was. I think probably a lot of them look like this. So let me know what you think. We've got the regular season coming up in 2 weeks. We face off against the Baltimore Ravens, the J.K. Dobbins-less Baltimore Ravens. I'll make a video talk about what I'm going to be looking for, what I hope to see. These first 5 games are brutal. We've got to be sharp. We've got to be off on the right foot. Some of the hype around the preseason and the offseason, I believe that John Gruden is fully in on the Bryan Edwards hype. He didn't take a single snap this entire preseason. Some of the hype I don't believe as much. I don't necessarily believe the Tanner Muse hype as much as everyone else seems to think. Not that I don't think he can be good or will be good or what starting caliber, but I know that I saw him in the fourth quarter of that last preseason game. And those are 2 guys. I know that Muse is coming off an injury, but that's 2 guys from the same draft class who've been around the team facilities for the same amount of time, getting very similar hype at different parts in time of the preseason process. And that's the difference right there, is one is not dressing because Gruden doesn't want to risk him being injured, and the other is playing in the fourth quarter while we're down by 3 possessions of the last preseason game. I think that he'll make the team. I think that he'll get solid reps. I think especially since we're so low or at linebacker right now, but I would hold off on the hype until he does a little bit more. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be the focal point like a lot of people are talking about. Okay, so that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think. If you agree, go ahead and leave a comment and agree. Disagree, let me know why. Tell me what you think. Subscribe if you haven't, and just win, baby.